All right, I do want to switch gears because another panel here today was tackling the financial crisis and really taking a look at the recession. It was called "You Have No Idea What Trouble We're In." It scared a lot of us. But that sunny subject was then followed by another one called "Here's How to Get Out of It." Well, our next guest served on that panel. He is Professor Joseph Stiglitz of Columbia University, Nobel Prize-winning economist. Professor Stiglitz, great to have you back with us.
Nice to be here again.
So, can we get out of this mess? I know you talk about stimulus, but it doesn't seem like people want to endorse that. Can we get out of this mess?
You know, economies always recover. The real question is how long is it going to be and how much suffering? The answer is without a stimulus, it's going to be longer, much longer. We ought to be clear. Monetary policy is not going to get us out. A lot of talk about quantitative easing, QE2. The likelihood that that will have a significant effect is close to zero.
But the markets love it. What? Because it just increases liquidity. Why not, right?
Of course. It gets stock market prices up. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about getting out of the mess. What we're talking about in the short run is getting the unemployment rate down, and that means substantial increases in spending.
But you and I have talked about this a lot in terms of increasing, spending. Why not just say, step back and let the market correct itself? At some point, don't we have to do hands off and just let it correct?
Well, Keynes put it very forcefully. Yes, in the long run we'll recover, but in the long run we're all dead.
Right.
So,
but shouldn't we all have to feel a little bit of pain? And forgive me, maybe that sounds very cold, and I know there's a lot of folks out of work, but some folks have said maybe we need to feel back. I think Alan Greenspan said that nobody wants to feel any significant pain.
It's almost unconscionable for somebody who messed up and created the problem to say, oh, other people now have to suffer and wait until we figure out what to do.
Right.
Now, the answer is the reason we have government is that sometimes it makes mistakes, but it ought to have the capacity to correct those mistakes. Now, right now, we do have the capacity. We are one of the countries that has the capacity to borrow money, to spend that money, to get the economy going again. We have it in our capacity to do it. And so it's just like the crisis was a man-made crisis.
Right.
The prolongation of this crisis is also a man-made decision.
All right. On the panel today, Professor Stiglitz, with you was Harvard University historian Neil Ferguson. You know what he says. He warns that more stimulus may trigger a debt spiral in the world's biggest economy. He made the point that the risk is at some point your fiscal policy loses credibility in the eyes of investors. Does he make a good point, though?
He makes a point that's relevant for Greece. They had no choice, and they had to cut back their spending. But the United States, interest rates are short-term 0, 2.5%, longer term. The United States can borrow, and one of the points that I made, and several of the other people in the panel supported this view, that if we take that money and we invest in our future, invest in education, technology, infrastructure, we're actually a stronger country.
But that takes a while. The point was also made that when you make some of those investments, it's not overnight. It takes a while.
Well, the spending, if we got it organized, could happen right away. We knew that here we're in New Orleans. At the top of the list of the infrastructure projects that were needed at the beginning of the 2000s was the New Orleans levees.
Right.
And we knew that. And yet the decision was made to spend money in other ways. A war in Iraq, other ways, tax cuts for well-off Americans. The consequence of those decisions was obvious here. We wasted hundreds of billions of dollars relative to what we would have had to spend if we spent just a few $billion in restoring the levee. The mayor made that point last night very forcefully. This was a man-made crisis, calamity, disaster. It wasn't an act of nature because we knew about the need for the levees. And we have the good thing about America is because we've underinvested for the last 10 years, we have a lot of high return investments that would stimulate the economy right away. The full benefits, of course, will be felt for a long time. But this is the real point. Our financial markets were very short-sighted for a very long time. We need to get a longer-term vision, and that's really what much of the conference is about.
I know Matt wants to jump in here. Matt.
Well, I want to ask Professor Stiglitz, what do you think of the old-school sort of Keynesian idea that it doesn't matter what you spend money on as long as you spend it? Does that hold true, or do you think that the spending should be targeted towards more stimulative areas?
Well, what the old Keynesian idea is that no matter what you do, it will stimulate the economy to some extent. But there are some things that you can do that stimulate the economy in the short run more, and there's some things that you can do that will lead to higher long-term growth. And what I've been arguing is that we need to combine both of those, that we need to direct. If we had a lot of money, we could be a little bit more profligate because of our tightness of budget, and I think this is where budgets do fit in. We have to be a little bit more careful in framing our stimulus package, more careful than we did in February 2009 when 40% went on tax cuts. We all knew that wasn't going to stimulate the economy a great deal, and it didn't.
Right. 20 seconds left here. I mean, do you think 6 months, 12 months from now that we're going to be still in this state, the economy's going to be on a dangerous footing?
Very much so. We may be a little bit better, we may be a little bit worse, but we will not be out of the woods. The probability of that, there's always uncertainty.
Right.
Probability very low.
All right, we're going to leave there. Professor Stiglitz, thank you as always.
Nice to be here.
Professor Joseph Stiglitz. Matt, back to you.